During the summer before first semester, I attended a virtual freshman interest meeting about B School. That's the hip term for the Robbins School of Business here at UR. The speaker spoke about interning and mentoring under professors. I remember my heart beating so fast when the other freshmen chimed in, nodding approvingly at the array of opportunities. As a first-gen kid, nobody in my family had held any internships. Because the job was always dismissed by my family as just buying boatloads of coffee for your work superiors, I didn't feel any sentimental value towards it. Besides, I can't pay off my hefty student debt at an unpaid internship. To this day, I feel lost for not being able to see the value of these amazing opportunities my school provides. Welcome back, guys, to Sociological Stories. This is once again your host, Felicia. Being a first-generation college student, which means that your parents did not attain a degree, is stressful. We've already established that during the last segment. Responding to the question, what are the factors impacting stress levels in first-generation college students, I concluded that they were the lack of trust for mental health resources as well as the lack of familial support. This week, I'm going to introduce the importance of having social and cultural capital on campus and their factoring into first-gen stress levels. You might ask, what is cultural capital? Cultural capital is a specialized knowledge about social institutions generally reserved for and passed down in the upper classes or dominant groups. Moreover, in a 2018 study in the Journal of Diversity in Higher Education, researchers found that first-generation students often do not have parents who are willing to help them navigate the college environment. Continuing generation students may be more likely to consult a parent with questions relating to navigating college-related problems. In the last segment of this podcast, I expressed my long-term jealousy towards my peers with college-educated parents because they had family who could explain to them how to survive dorming or give them educational advice. I was jealous because my continuing generation peers who had parents with degrees had more cultural capital than me, a first-generation student. Furthermore, the lack of cultural capital is a major factor contributing to stress levels. First-gen kids are more stressed out than continuing-gen kids because we don't have predisposition knowledge about college. We have to spend more time worrying about and figuring out ourselves the nuances of campus life. Northwestern University professor Dr. Nicole Stevens stated that first-generation students experience higher stress levels because they typically attend lower-quality high schools than continuing generation students. As a result, in transitioning to college, they often need additional tutoring, mentoring, and social support. Moreover, prior to college, they have less exposure and access to the type of middle-class cultural capital understandings of the rules of the game that are taken for granted as normative by many American universities. The phrase, the rules of the game, is another way of saying predisposition knowledge of elite social institutions. Dr. Stevens is saying in this excerpt that colleges assume that their students are in possession of cultural capital. Colleges assume that their student demographic comes from the college-educated class by not taking into account the fact that first-generation students don't have the same advantages of the dominant group. They don't provide them the necessary counseling and support, such as tutoring and mentoring, to alleviate the stress of lacking cultural capital. Another factor contributing to first-generation student stress is our lack of social capital. What is social capital? Well, it's having access to resources through one's social network. These resources allow for further social mobility, and once again, social capital is passed down generationally, so it is thus reserved for the upper crust. While researching the correlation between social capital and stress, I stumbled across an article by Dr. Colleen O'Neill. I cried when I read her article because she included heartbreaking testimonials from first-gen as well as undocumented peers. For many of these kids, their ability to gain social capital is stunted by the lack of resources growing up, including financial challenges. Nancy, a first-generation junior, describes her experience. A little 6-year-old going to school, and I already know the bills are coming up. I have to go fill out these checks, or food stamps, or Medicare. Ever since I was young, I was being a translator, almost being like an accountant to my parents. Because of Nancy's working-class childhood, Fiscal situations are associated as stressful times through her familial network. Therefore, financials later in life, such as her tuition, would cause her more stress than for her peers who did not have to worry about money in the past. Suffolk University researcher Dr. Sarah Short stated, on campus, first-generation college students are less likely to initiate contact with faculty, including contributing to class discussions, reaching out via email, attending office hours, and seeking out positions in faculty research labs. Continuing generation kids have parents whose networks included alumni and people in specialized professions because they attended college together. Thus, they have more social capital than first-gen kids whose social networks are less likely to include scholars and academics. Continuing gen kids reach out to faculty more because they are comfortable around college-educated folk. In my B-School meeting experience, I became stressed out when the speaker mentioned internships because I did not possess as much social capital as my other peers. We're nearing the end of today's podcast. We've discussed how social capital and cultural capital affects first-gen student stress levels. The lack of cultural capital leaves first-gen kids to worry about navigating elements of uni life that continuing generation kids don't because they have more cultural capital. Because they belong to the college-educated class, they have parents who have passed down knowledge to take for granted. The lack of social capital leads to higher stress levels in first-gen kids who want to expand their network. They have fewer interactions with faculty because their social networks did not include many people who hold degrees. A working-class social network can also place more stress on aspects the dominant class in college should not worry about, such as money. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Sociological Stories. Peace out.